Tonight, we are going to walk through the crystal gate that Enoch walked through, the one described in chapter 14 of the book of Enoch, and we are going to discover something that has been hidden in plain sight for 2,000 years. There are not one, but TWO crystal thresholds in this ancient text, and the guards at the first gate were not checking worthiness. They were measuring something far more specific. This comes from the Ge'ez tradition, preserved in the ancient manuscripts of Ethiopia. Breathe with me. We are going there, together. Close your eyes. You are standing on a stone floor, ancient, worn smooth by 10,000 prayers before yours. You are inside the stone walls of an Ethiopian church in Aksum, the oldest Christian city on this earth. These stones were carved by hands that read the Book of Enoch as scripture, that sang the Ge'ez Psalms before Rome ever decided what the Bible was allowed to contain. There is a door ahead of you. The door is made of something you have never seen before. It catches light the way ice does, and the way fire does. At the same time, you have been here before, in a dream perhaps, or in that space between sleep and waking, where the old things still speak. You know this door. You are not alone here. I know what it is like to lie awake at night, with thoughts that will not settle, with a heaviness in the chest that does not lift. Even when the room goes dark, I know what it is like to reach for something that feels larger than the ceiling, larger than the anxiety, larger than the night itself. And that is why I come back to these ancient texts tonight and every night. Tonight we are entering 1 Enoch, chapter 14, the passage where Enoch himself is carried by wind and clouds and lightning into the highest heaven. And what he describes there has been quietly shaping Ethiopian Orthodox worship for over 1,600 years. Tonight's text contains something I have never shared before. There are TWO crystal structures in chapter 14. Most translations, most scholars have read them as one, and what the gods at the first gate were measuring was not what you think. Before we continue, dear friend, if this ancient voice is bringing peace to your night, a quiet subscribe means that tomorrow night and the night after, this rest will still be here for you. You don't need to move. Just a thought. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? I wonder who is resting with us right now. From how many different places? How many different beds? How many different burdens? Now, let us go deeper. There is a word in Ge'ez, the ancient sacred language of Ethiopia, the language in which the full Book of Enoch has survived for 2,000 years, while every other language lost it. That word is Berhan, Bir-Han, in Ge'ez. Berhan means light, but not ordinary light. Not the light of a candle or a screen or a street lamp. Berhan is the word Ethiopian Orthodox monks use in their morning prayers when they speak of the light that comes from the presence of God itself. Uncreated light, the kind of light that does not come from any source. In this world, tonight, we are walking toward that Berhan. In our last gathering, we stood above heaven and looked at the map. Enoch's blueprint of those rooms God never showed Adam. Tonight, we do not look at the map. Tonight, we walk through the gate. The same Book of Enoch, chapter 14. But from the inside, let me read you the beginning of this passage, exactly as it has been preserved in the Ethiopian Ge'ez tradition, in the same manuscripts that the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has guarded since the year 330 AD. 1 Enoch, chapter 14, verse 8. And in the vision, clouds invited me, and a mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightnings sped and hastened me, and the winds in the vision caused me to fly, and lifted me upward, and bore me into heaven. Pause there for just a moment. Enoch does not climb to heaven. He is invited by clouds, summoned by mist, hastened by the course of stars and lightning, lifted by winds. Every element of creation is participating in carrying this one human being upward. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has a teaching about this passage, preserved in their commentary tradition, that most Western readers of 1 Enoch have never encountered. They say that the reason the entire created order participated in Enoch's ascent is because Enoch had spent his life studying the created order, learning the patterns of the stars, the rhythms of the winds, the way mist moves in the morning. He had become so aligned with creation that when the time came for him to be carried, creation already knew him. There is something in that for those of us who lie awake at night, feeling disconnected from the world around us, from ourselves, from God. The ancient Gaz tradition says, align yourself with the created rhythms, and the created rhythms will carry you. Let us continue. Ferzania. And I went in till I drew nigh to a wall, which is built of crystals, and surrounded by tongues of fire. The first thing Enoch encounters is not a gate, not a doorway, not a threshold you walk through. It is a wall built of crystals, and surrounded on all sides by tongues of fire. Now here is where most people reading this text make the first mistake. Most readers assume that this crystal wall and the crystal house described in the very next verse are the same structure, two descriptions of one thing, but they are not. In the Jez text, in the manuscripts preserved at Lake Tana monasteries, in the commentary tradition of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, these are described as two entirely separate and distinct structures, two thresholds, two tests, two gateways, and understanding the difference between them changes everything about what this passage means. The first structure, this crystal wall of fire, has a name in the Gez tradition. It is called Mesfin Berhan. Say it quietly with me if you wish. Mesfin Berhan. In Yez, Mesfin means prince or governor, the one who rules a gateway, the guardian of a threshold, and Berhan, as we said, is sacred light, divine radiance. Mesfin Berhan, the prince gate of light. This is the outer threshold, the first wall, the first test, and the guards here are measuring something very specific. We will come to what they are measuring in just a moment. But first, let us understand what this crystal wall is made of. When the Book of Enoch says crystals, the gaze word used is not a generic word for any kind of mineral. The word in the original Aramaic fragments preserved in the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran, the fragments labeled 4Q201 by archaeologists, discovered in the caves above the Dead Sea in the 1940s. The word used there is a specific Aramaic term that means refined crystal, tested crystal, crystal that has been subjected to extreme pressure and heat and has survived. Not decorative crystal, not rough crystal, but proven crystal. Ethiopian Orthodox theology draws on this. The Tewahedo tradition teaches that the outer wall of heaven is built of tested things, things that have been through fire, things that have held. And tonight, lying in your bed, carrying whatever you carry today, that image is for you. What has been tested in you and held is the material God builds walls from. Let me also introduce you to the first of the great angel families we will encounter tonight, because their name will come back to us again and again as we move through this passage. The term used in the gaze text for the wheel angels around God's throne is Galgal. Gal. Gal in Gae. Galgal means something that rolls, that cycles, that turns without end. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has preserved this word in their liturgical tradition for 1,600 years. The Galgal prayer cycle, the rotating daily prayers of Ethiopian monks, the sacred rhythm of worship that turns and turns and never stops, is named after these same throne wheels that Enoch is about to see. And tonight, if your thoughts are spinning in circles that will not stop, if rest feels like something that belongs to someone else, you are not far from the same wheels that turn at the center of all things, the Galgal that never stops turning, but turns in perfect peace. Did you catch that? The word the Ethiopian monks pray with daily, Galgal, comes directly from what Enoch saw tonight. Beautiful. The wall stands before Enoch, not far away in the distance, not a vague shimmer on the horizon. It stands before him, close enough that he can feel what it is made of. 1 Enoch chapter 14 says he came near to it, drew nigh. Those are the words, draw nigh. There is something profoundly human in those two words. Enoch draws near. He does not charge through. He does not demand entry. He draws near, slowly. And the text says, it began to affright me. It frightened him. Enoch, the man who walked with God, the man the entire book of Enoch is named after, the most righteous man of his generation. He was frightened. If you have ever felt a kind of holy fear in a moment of genuine prayer, if you have ever felt something in the quiet that was both wonderful and terrifying at the same time, you know something of what Enoch felt at this wall. Now, the Ge'ez tradition, preserved at Lake Tana in the Tanahike manuscripts, one of the most important repositories of Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo scholarship, has a commentary on this moment of Enoch's fear. The commentary says that the fear Enoch felt was not the fear of something that wants to harm him. It was the fear of something so far beyond his normal category of experience that his whole system, body, mind, spirit, had no reference point for it. In the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, this specific kind of sacred fear has a name. It is called Yiret Kedas. Yireh means awe, fear. Kedas means holy. Yiret Kedas, holy awe. Not fear that makes you run away, but fear that makes you draw near, even as every ordinary instinct says otherwise. And Enoch drew near. He went into the tongues of fire, not around them, not through a gap in the wall, into the tongues of fire. And he came to a large house, which was built of crystals. And now we have arrived at the moment I have been waiting to share with you, because most readers reach this verse and assume this crystal house is the same as the crystal wall, just a more detailed description of what they already passed. But in the Ge'ez tradition, it is not. The outer wall, the Mesfin Burhan, the Prince Gate of Light, that was the first threshold. This crystal house is the second threshold, and it has its own Ge'ez name. In the Tanahike manuscripts, it is called Bet Kedas. Bet Kedas. In Ge'ez, Bet means house, dwelling, the place where something lives permanently, and Kedas means holy, set apart, belonging entirely to God. Betkerus, the holy house, 2 thresholds, 2 crystal structures, 2 gateways, Mesfen Berhan and Betkedus. And now I want to tell you something that will change the way you understand every Ethiopian Orthodox church you have ever seen or heard of. In just a moment, we will reach the passage where Enoch enters the crystal house and discovers the most astonishing thing about it, the specific detail that Western translations consistently miss. To stay with me. First, let us walk through what Enoch sees inside this outer crystal wall. As he approaches the crystal house, he sees the walls of the house. They are like a tessellated floor. Tessellated. That word means made of small tiles, pieced together, like a mosaic. Imagine walking toward a house whose walls are made of small crystal tiles, each one fitted perfectly against the next, each one catching the light of the fire surrounding the wall you just passed through, and the ground, the floor beneath his feet, the groundwork, also crystal. Everything, wall and floor and ground, all of it crystal. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has a beautiful name for this image. They call it Bear Berhan. Bare means sea or vast expanse. Berhan, we know, sacred light. Bare Berhan, the sea of sacred light. Ethiopian monks at Lake Tana monasteries, on their island sanctuaries in the middle of that great highland lake, they have been describing heaven in this language since 330 AD. And when you understand that their church, at Axum, the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, the most sacred site in Ethiopian Christianity, was built deliberately to mirror this very image, the tessellated crystal walls of Enoch's Betkedus, you begin to understand that the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church did not just preserve the Book of Enoch as a text on a shelf. They built it in stone. They made it walkable. Let that sink in. The house of God that Enoch saw, Ethiopian Christians walk through every Sunday. There is something about crystal floors that I want you to feel tonight. When you stand on a crystal floor, you can see below you, not into darkness, not into a void, but into another layer of the same light that surrounds you. Enoch is standing on a crystal floor, in a crystal house, surrounded by crystal walls, and he can see through every surface, in every direction. There is nowhere to hide in this place, nothing to cover yourself with, nothing to disappear into, just light. And yet, the text does not say Enoch felt exposed, or ashamed, or desperate to look away. He walked in. He stood on the crystal floor. He looked up, and what he saw above him was the ceiling. 1 Enoch, chapter 14, verse 11. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings, and between them were fiery cherubim, and their heaven was as water. Read that again slowly. The ceiling was like the path of the stars, not like painted stars, not like a decoration meant to suggest the sky. The actual paths the stars travel, the curved arcs of light that stars trace across the night sky. That is what the ceiling of this house looks like. Ethiopian monks at the island monasteries of Lake Tana, the ones who have preserved the Ge'ez manuscripts of 1 Enoch for 16 centuries, they would go to the open roofs of their monasteries on clear nights, and they would watch the stars, specifically to see this, not as an astronomical exercise, but as a prayer practice, contemplative prayer through star watching. They called it Safna Berhan, the gazing at the Berhan, and in between the star paths of the ceiling, Fiere Cherubim. Cherubim in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition are not the small winged babies of Western art. Cherubim in Enoch and in the Geese tradition are enormous, ancient, made of fire. The word cherubim comes from the Hebrew cheruvim, the powerful ones, the guardians. In the Ethiopian Ge'ez tradition, cherubim are described as the angels who hold the boundary between the created and the uncreated, between what can be approached and what cannot. They stand in the ceiling of the Bet Kadis, between the star paths, made of fire, burning between the trajectories of the cosmos and their heaven. Their own atmosphere, their own domain just above the ceiling, is described as water, fire below the ceiling, water above it. Fire and water, the two elements that most resist each other in ordinary life, held in tension here by the ceiling of the Bet Kadis, the holy house. I want to sit with that image for a moment. Fire below, water above, meeting at the ceiling, neither consuming the other. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has a teaching about this image that comes from their ancient commentary tradition. They say that this ceiling represents the threshold of Christian meditation, the point at which the soul, in its deepest contemplative prayer, stops being either fire or water, stops being either one thing or its opposite, and simply rests in the tension between them. They call this state Sahel Kedos, Sahel, the reason, Kedos, holy, the holy horizon. And tonight, if you are lying there, somewhere between sleep and waking, somewhere between the fire of the day's worries and the water of rest you are reaching toward, you may be closer to the ceiling of the Bet Kadis than you think. That in-between place is not emptiness. In the Ge'ez tradition, it is the most sacred threshold of all. Let that reach you. The place between sleep and waking, where you are right now, is holy ground. The Galgal wheel angels we mentioned earlier, they move within this space, the space between fire and water, between ceiling and sky, rotating continuously. In the Ethiopian Orthodox liturgical tradition, the Tewahedo Church has preserved a specific prayer form called the Galgal Kedos, the holy rolling, the circular prayer that never ends. 7 prayers, rotating in sequence, like wheels. This prayer cycle was designed by Ethiopian monks specifically to mimic what Enoch saw in the ceiling of the Bet Kadis, the sound of cherubim moving between star paths, translated into human prayer. That always gets me. The prayers that Ethiopian monks say every day, in monasteries, on islands in Lake Tana, are a human translation of what Enoch saw in the ceiling of this crystal house. Beautiful. Now I want to go back to the crystal wall, the Mesfin Burhan, because there is something there I have not yet told you. Something that most people reading this text have passed right over. And it is the most important thing in the passage. Go back with me to 1 Enoch 14 Verse 9. And I went in till I drew nigh to a wall which is built of crystals and surrounded by tongues of fire. In our last section, I told you that the guards at this wall were measuring something specific. I told you they were not measuring worthiness, or rank, or spiritual achievement. And I promised I would tell you what they were actually measuring. Here it is. In the Ge'ez Tewahedo commentary tradition, the commentary preserved in the Tanahike manuscripts at Lake Tana, the guards at the Mesfin Burhan are described as measuring one thing only: whether the approaching being can survive a paradox. 2 verses later, in 1 Enoch, chapter 14, verse 13, Enoch describes what it is like inside the crystal house. He says, "And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice. There were no delights of life therein. Hot as fire and cold as ice. At the same time, in the same place." Most readers of this text stop here and say, that is a literary paradox. A writer using extreme opposites to describe something beyond description. A rhetorical device. And for Western Christianity, that is generally where the commentary ends. But the Gaze commentary tradition goes somewhere very different. In the Tannahaik manuscripts, this specific phenomenon has a name. Baranvik Elel, Bur, Han, Wi, Gi, Lel. In Jes, Buran we already know. Sacred light, divine radiance. Quelel means cold, chill. The quality of something that has descended from higher. Berhan Vakwelel, light and cold. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has taught for 16 centuries that this is not a literary paradox. It is a theological description. It is the first statement in any scripture of what happens when a human soul approaches the uncreated divine energy. Western theology has a concept called the beatific vision, the idea that in heaven souls will see God directly. Eastern Orthodox theology has the concept of theosis, or deification, the soul participating in the divine nature. Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo theology has Berhanvakelu, the moment when the soul approaches the uncreated light and experiences it as both heat and cold simultaneously, because the uncreated light is beyond all temperature, beyond all ordinary sensation, beyond all category the human nervous system has ever been trained to recognize. So, what are the guards at the Mesfin Burhan measuring? They are measuring whether the approaching being can hold the paradox. Can you survive simultaneously the fire of the divine presence and the cold of the divine transcendence? Can your being hold two things at once that ordinary existence tells you cannot coexist? This is what the Gies tradition says, and it is a profound question, not only for Enoch standing at a crystal wall 2,000 years ago, but for anyone, anywhere, lying in the dark tonight. If you have ever felt something in a moment of prayer that was beyond your ability to name, that felt like both presence and absence at once, both intimacy and infinite distance, both warmth and something that made you shiver, you have been standing at the Mesfin Burhan. You have been at the outer threshold of what Enoch walked through, and the guards were not telling you to leave. They were measuring you, and measuring is different from judging. Now, here is the even deeper question that the Ethiopian commentary raises. If the guards are measuring whether a being can survive the paradox, then why could no angel pass through? In just a moment, we will reach the answer to that question, one that Western scholars have not seen for 1,600 years, and one that will change how you understand your own access to God. Stay with me. Let us think carefully about what a paradox is, not as a rhetorical device, not as a figure of speech, but as a genuine experience. A paradox is a moment when two things that cannot be true at the same time are both true at the same time. Hot and cold cannot both be experienced in the same object at the same moment. That is what our senses tell us. That is what our ordinary experience confirms. And yet, Enoch stands in a house that is hot as fire and cold as ice. Simultaneously, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, in its commentary tradition, draws a distinction between two kinds of paradox. The first kind they call Ketel Burhan, the paradox of mind, the logical contradiction that cannot be resolved by thinking. The second kind they call Ye Egziaberkal, the Word of God's paradox, the living contradiction that can only be resolved by encounter. Berhan Vakel, the hot and cold of the divine presence. Ish Ye Egziaberkal. It cannot be resolved by thinking. It cannot be explained by theology. It can only be survived by entry. And this is precisely what the guards at the Mesfin Burhan are testing. Not, have you thought correctly about God? Not, have you believed the right things? Not, have you accumulated sufficient righteousness? But, can you enter something that cannot be understood before you enter it? Can you walk through a wall of fire toward a paradox that your mind will never be able to resolve? There is a practice in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church called Lectio Divina, sacred reading, that the Church has preserved in a form different from its Roman Catholic version. In the Tewahedo form of Lectio Divina, the reader does not read the scripture in order to understand it. They read it in order to stand inside it. You read until you find the word or image that holds you, and then you stop reading, and you just stand there, inside that word, letting it be both fire and cold, both clarity and mystery. This is Christian meditation, as Enoch practiced it. Without calling it that, he walked toward the crystal wall. Without fully understanding it, he entered the tongues of fire. Without knowing what was on the other side, he stepped onto the crystal floor. Without a map of what came next. Entry before understanding. The Dead Sea Scrolls fragments. The 4Q 201 fragments discovered at Qumran, above the Dead Sea in 1947. The oldest surviving pieces of the Book of Enoch in the original Aramaic. These fragments contain a passage that most modern readers have overlooked. In the Aramaic text of 1 Enoch 14, there is a phrase just before the description of the crystal wall, a phrase that most English translations render simply as, "It began to affright me." But the Aramaic word translated as affright is a word that means something closer to the expansion of a container beyond its known limits. Not, I was afraid, but I was expanded beyond what I had known myself to be. Enoch was not simply frightened, he was enlarged. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has preserved this distinction in their theological vocabulary. They call this state Yirat Timhert. Yirat Hui O Timhert. Instruction, the sacred fear that teaches you what you did not know about yourself. And what Enoch learned about himself at that wall was that he was large enough to hold what cannot be held. The guards measured him, and he was sufficient. Now, in just a moment, we will discover something even more remarkable. We will discover why the guards did not measure the angels who stood at the outer edge of this wall, and why the Ethiopian Tewahedo tradition says that angels, the very beings who are made of fire, cannot pass through the second threshold. Why would creatures made of fire be stopped by fire? That question is one of the most profound in all of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo commentary tradition, and we are going to walk all the way through it. Stay with me. But first, let me tell you something about the Ge'ez word for the crystal in this wall, because it carries within it a piece of information that no Western translation has preserved. The word in the Ge'ez text, the word for the crystal of these walls, is not the ordinary word for crystal or glass used elsewhere in Ethiopian scripture. It is a specific Ge'ez word that is also used in Ethiopian metallurgy for refined gold, for metal that has been subjected to the hottest possible fire and has come out the other side, not merely intact, but purified. The crystal of the Mesfin Berhan is not decorative crystal. It is refined crystal, tested crystal, crystal that has already been through the fire that surrounds it. That is what you are walking toward tonight. Walls made of things that survived their own testing. And the Council of Carthage in 397 AD, when they decided to remove the Book of Enoch from the Western biblical canon. They did not just remove a book, they removed a theology of tested purity. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church kept it and built their most sacred buildings from its principles. That always gets me. What was called too dangerous for the Western canon, the Ethiopians built churches from. Beautiful. Let us be very still for a moment, because what we are about to enter is the most specific and unusual description in any ancient religious text of what the presence of God feels like to walk into, not to observe from a distance, not to read about in a commentary, not to think about in a philosophy class, to walk into 1 Enoch. Chapter 14, verse 13. And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire, and cold as ice. There were no delights of life therein. Fear covered me, and trembling got hold upon me. There were no delights of life therein. What an extraordinary phrase. In the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo commentary. At Axum, the ancient commentary tradition, preserved in the stone church archives of the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. This phrase is given careful attention. The commentators ask, why would a holy place have no delights of life in it? Is heaven uncomfortable? Is the throne room of God unpleasant? Their answer, preserved in the Ge'ez tradition, is this: the delights of life are the pleasures built for creatures who exist within time. Food and warmth and beauty and comfort are calibrated for beings who have edges, who get hungry and cold and tired. But the presence of God exists outside time, and in a place outside time, the delights of life do not translate, because they were designed for life within time. This is not a description of an uncomfortable heaven. It is a description of a presence so immense, so total, so complete, that the ordinary comfort mechanisms of creaturely life simply fall away. The way silence is uncomfortable, only until you have been in it long enough to discover that it is not empty. And fear covered Enoch, and trembling got hold upon him. In the Ge'ez Tewahedo tradition, the word for this kind of covering fear is kirbet egziabher, chirbet, to draw close to, egziabher, God, kirbet egziabher, the drawing close to God fear, not running away fear, not punishment fear, but the fear of a creature drawing close to the source of its own existence. When you stand at the edge of a great ocean, there is a kind of reversal that happens in the body, a slight dizziness, a sense that the floor has changed beneath you, not because the ocean is threatening you, but because your system is recalibrating, recognizing that it is in the presence of something vastly larger than itself. Kirbet egziabher. This is what covered Enoch in the crystal house, and yet he stayed. That is the part I want you to notice. Fear covered him, trembling got hold of him, and he stayed. He did not run back through the crystal wall. He did not retreat to the ordinary world, where fear was manageable and familiar. He stayed in the trembling. The Ethiopian Christian meditation tradition has a practice built on exactly this moment. It is called Kim Egziabher. To stand still, to hold your ground, Metsihafe, God, stand still and go. In sleep meditation, in the moments just before sleep, when the ordinary mind is releasing, when the anxiety of the day is finally losing its grip, the instruction from the Ge'ez tradition is, do not rush toward sleep, do not fight toward unconsciousness. Metsihafe, stand still and go. Let the trembling be, let the fear be. Stay in the threshold. Sleep will come from the inside of the stillness, not from the outside of it. In just a moment, we reach the passage where Enoch describes the second house, the inner chamber, built not of crystal but of pure flame, and we will discover why not even the highest angels could enter it. A discovery that will reframe what it means for God to call you by name. Stay with me. Enoch is inside the crystal house now, on the crystal floor, the crystal walls around him, the ceiling of star paths and fiery cherubim above him. And the text says, 1 Enoch chapter 14 verse 15, and I beheld a vision, and lo, there was a second house, greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me, and it was built of flames of fire. A second house, greater than the first. And here, the first thing to notice is that the portal of this second house stood completely open, not guarded, not measured, not surrounded by tongues of fire that needed to be entered through. Open, the outer wall, the Mesfin Berhan, required passing through fire to approach. The crystal house, the Bet Kedus, had walls of tested crystal and a ceiling of stars. But this second house, this inner chamber, this final threshold, its portal stood completely open. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo commentary at Lake Tana has something striking to say about this open portal. It says, the outer places of God are protected because ordinary things might damage them, but the innermost place of God needs no protection because only what has already passed through all the preparation can reach it, and when a prepared being reaches it, there is nothing to protect it from. The door stands open because the gatekeeping already happened at the Mesfin Berhan and at the Bet Kedus. By the time you reach the inner fire, you are already proven. And this second house, this inner chamber, is built of flames of fire, not crystals, not stone, not anything solid. Flames. In the Ge'ez Tewahedo tradition, this transition from crystal to fire is theologically significant. Crystal, in the Ethiopian Orthodox understanding, represents the created order at its most refined, creation that has been purified to total clarity, creation that can hold light without distorting it. But fire, in the same tradition, represents something else entirely. Fire represents what cannot be reduced to create its substance at all. Fire destroys its fuel. It consumes what it touches, and it cannot itself be touched. The transition from crystal to fire, in Enoch's vision, is the transition from the purified created order to something that exists beyond all creation, from the clearest possible crystal to the thing that crystal cannot contain. And now we arrive at the verse that carries the greatest surprise in this entire passage. 1 Enoch, chapter 14, verse 21. None of the angels could enter, and could behold his face by reason of the magnificence and glory, and no flesh could behold him. None of the angels could enter. None of them. Not the most senior angels, not the cherubim from the ceiling of the crystal house, not the Galgal wheel angels who turn around the throne. None of the angels could enter the inner firehouse. And the reason the text gives is the magnificence and the glory, too great, too immense, too overwhelming, even for beings whose entire existence is defined by greatness and immensity. In just a moment, we will arrive at the Ethiopian Tewahedo understanding of why the angels cannot enter, an understanding that will profoundly change how you understand your own relationship to God. Stay with me. Here is the question the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo commentary tradition has been sitting with for 16 centuries. If the angels are made of fire, and the second house is made of fire, why cannot the angels enter the house? Western theology has generally answered this question in one of two ways. The first answer: the angels are too sinful. They lack moral perfection. The second answer: the divine glory is so vast that even perfect beings are overwhelmed by it. Both of these answers assume that the barrier is essentially a matter of capacity. The angels are not enough. But the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo commentary at Aksum, the tradition preserved in the stone church archives of the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, gives a third answer, and it is the most unexpected answer. In this entire tradition, the angels cannot enter the firehouse, not because they are too small, but because they are the same substance as what is inside. Let me explain this carefully, because it changes everything. Angels in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo theology are beings of pure, spiritual fire, beings whose entire substance is a specific quality of divine light and heat. The fire of the inner house, the fire of the throne room of God, is the uncreated divine fire, the fire that was before any fire existed, the fire that angels are made from. And when a created fire, however great, however ancient, however pure, meets the uncreated fire that it came from, it is not strengthened, it is dissolved. An angel in the presence of the uncreated fire cannot maintain its individual existence. It cannot hold its own borders. It cannot remain a distinct being, because it is made of the same substance in a created form, and the uncreated form simply absorbs the created form back into itself. This is why the most holy angels stood outside, not in judgment, not in shame. In the Ethiopian Tewahedo understanding, they stood outside because they loved God enough to know their own nature, and their nature was that entering the fire meant ceasing to be themselves. And then, the text says, Enoch entered. Enoch, a human being, made of dust and the breath of God. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition has a very specific teaching about why Enoch could enter where the angels could not. In Genesis chapter 2 verse 7, it says, God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Dust and breath, two substances combined in one being. The Ethiopian Tewahedo commentary draws a direct line between Genesis 2-7 and 1 Enoch chapter 14. It says, human beings are the only created things that hold both the material world and the divine breath within a single existence. We are creatures of paradox from the moment of our creation, made of dust, which is the most earthly substance, and breath of God, which is the most heavenly. And a creature of paradox is the only kind of creature that can survive a paradox. The fire and cold of the Mesfin Burhan could be survived by Enoch because he was already holding fire and cold within himself, dust and divine breath, earth and heaven. The angels, made of pure spiritual fire, could not hold the paradox of fire and cold at the outer gate because they were not made of paradox. They were made of one single perfect substance, and one single perfect substance has no room for its opposite. And you, lying in your bed tonight, made of dust and divine breath, you carry within you the exact capacity that Enoch had, the capacity to hold opposites within you, to be both earth and heaven at once. This is why Enoch, and not the most senior angel, was called to walk through the crystal gate, and in a few moments we will reach the moment God speaks to Enoch by name, calling this paradox creature, this dust and breath human being, to come closer, in the one place where even angels dare not go. Stay with me. I want to show you something now that has been built in stone for 16 centuries, and that most people who have seen it did not know they were looking at Enoch's vision. In Ethiopia, in the ancient city of Axum, in the highlands where the Queen of Sheba is said to have been born, there stands a church, the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. It is the most sacred site in Ethiopian Christianity, the place where Ethiopians believe the original Ark of the Covenant rests, the place where Ethiopian kings were crowned for over 1,000 years, and it is built in 3 rings. The outer ring is called Chine Malet. Chine Malet, the place of the Chin, the sacred sung poetry of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. This is the outermost space where the music of the church rises, where the Dederas, the liturgical scholars, sing the complex sacred poetry that has been composed in Ge'ez for 1,600 years. This outer ring corresponds to the Mesfin Berhan, the outer crystal wall of Enoch's vision. The first threshold, the first test, the middle ring, is called Kedest, the holy space. This is where the congregation gathers for the Eucharist, the communion, the central act of Ethiopian Orthodox worship. This middle ring corresponds to the Bet Kedes, the inner crystal house of Enoch's vision. The second threshold, the crystal floor, the ceiling of stars and cherubim, and the innermost ring, the innermost chamber of every Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo church on earth, is called Mekdis, the Holy of Holies. This is where the tablet rests, the sacred replica of the Ark of the Covenant, the object that makes a church in the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. This inner ring corresponds to the second house, the house of pure fire, the throne room, where only ordained priests may enter. Chine Malet, Kedest, Mekdes, outer worship space, holy communion space, inner holy of holies, Mesfin Baran, Bet Kedes, second firehouse, outer crystal wall, inner crystal house, innermost flame throne room. They are the same architecture that churches built in Ethiopia from 330 AD onward. The most ancient, continuously operating Christian churches on earth are built from the blueprint that Enoch described in chapter 14 of the Book of Enoch. The Council of Carthage in 397 AD decided that the Book of Enoch was not part of the biblical canon for the Western Church, and so every church built in the Western tradition after 397 AD was built without this blueprint. But Ethiopian Christianity received the Book of Enoch as scripture, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church built their sacred spaces according to its architecture for 1,600 years. Every Ethiopian Christian who walked through the outer gate of their church stepped across the Mesfin Berhan. Every Ethiopian who received communion in the middle ring stood in the Bet Kedes, and every Ethiopian priest who entered the Mekdes walked through the open portal of the second firehouse, the one where even the angels stood outside. If that does not move you, let me say it one more time. Every Sunday, in churches across Ethiopia, and in Ethiopian Orthodox communities in every corner of the world, Christians physically walk through the architecture of Enoch's heavenly vision. The building is the scripture. The stone is the theology. The walk through the three rings, Chine Mahle, to Chedest, to the outer wall of the Mekdes, is a physical practice of approaching the same thresholds Enoch approached, and the Council of Carthage removed the book from the Western canon in 397 AD. But you cannot remove a book from the bones of a church. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church kept both. Let that sink in. The book they could not kill, the architecture that could not be unbuilt. Yes, Enoch is now in the second house, the inner fire chamber, the equivalent of the Mekdes, and he looks 1 Enoch chapter 14, verse 18. And I looked and saw therein a lofty throne. Its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun. And there was the vision of cherubim, a throne made of crystal. In the outer house, everything was crystal. The walls, the floor, the groundwork. And here, in the innermost fire room, where everything is flame, where the floor is fire, where the ceiling is fire, the throne is crystal, the one crystalline object in the innermost fire. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo commentary at Lake Tana calls this the Mesfin Kedus, the Holy Prince, the governing element that holds the paradox of fire around crystal, without the crystal melting, and without the fire being quenched, in the same way that a human being holds dust and divine breath, without either consuming the other. The throne is the center of the paradox, crystalline order in an ocean of consuming fire, and the wheels, the Ophanim. The text says their appearance was like the shining sun, not like sunlight filtered through atmosphere, not like the gentle morning sun, like the sun itself, the primary source, the undimmed light at its origin. The Aramaic Dead Sea Scrolls fragments from Qumran, the 4Q 201 fragments, the oldest surviving physical pieces of the Book of Enoch in the world, use the word Ophanim for these wheels. Ophanim, from the Aramaic root meaning to turn, to rotate, to cycle. The Ophanim are the turners, the rotating ones, the eternal cyclers, and the Ethiopian Ge'ez tradition calls them Galgal, from the same root concept, the rolling ones, the ones who turn. We said earlier that the Ethiopian monks have preserved the Galgal prayer cycle in their liturgical tradition for 1,600 years. 7 prayers, rotating in sequence, named after the throne wheels that Enoch is seeing right now. The Galgal, turning like the shining sun around a crystal throne in an inner fire room with an open door behind them. Think about what that means. The wheels never stop. The turning never ceases. Creation is maintained by the continuous rotation of the Ophanim. Galgal. Ethiopian monks have been praying the 7-prayer cycle in imitation of this rotation since 330 AD. Every day, every monastery, every island on Lake Tana, praying in circles, like throne wheels, turning like the sun. And beneath the throne, the text says in verse 19, from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire. The throne generates fire. It does not merely sit in fire, it produces it. The Ethiopian Tewahedo commentary says that this fire beneath the throne is the origin of all the fire in Enoch's vision. the tongues of fire around the outer crystal wall, the fire in the ceiling of cherubim, the fire that makes the second house, all of it flowing from beneath this crystal throne, in the same way that a river generates all the water downstream from it. The throne generates all the fire, surrounding the approaches to itself. What Enoch is looking at is the source, coming soon, the Galgal, the Ophanim. Their Gia's name has been spoken in Ethiopian monasteries every single day since 330 AD. And tonight, you will hear it as Enoch heard it. Stay with me. He looked at the throne. He looked at the wheels of sunfire, the Galgal turning, and then, verse 20, and the great glory sat thereon, and his raiment shone more brightly than the sun, and was whiter than any snow. The great glory. That is the title used in the Gaze Tewahedo tradition for God enthroned. Zilwet Kedus. Ziluet. The great radiance. The overpowering light. Kedos. Holy. The great holy radiance. And the raiment, the clothing, the garment of the great glory, brighter than the sun, whiter than any snow. There is something in that image that the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition has always found particularly significant. Two comparisons: sun brightness and snow whiteness. The sun and the snow are in some ways opposites. The sun produces heat. Snow is the product of cold. Fire and cold. Burhan Wekalal again. Even in the description of God's clothing, the paradox is present. The Ethiopian Tewahedo monks at the Lake Tana monasteries, who have been reading this passage in the original Gayes for 16 centuries, they say that the garment of the great glory is described in two ways, because a human observer can only approach the description of God. Through contrast, you cannot say what God is. You can only say, as bright as this, and as white as that, and let the two images together point towards something beyond both. And then the text says something that I want to hold with you for a moment. Verse 21, none of the angels could enter, and could behold his face, by reason of the magnificence and glory, and no flesh could behold him. Two exclusions. No angel could enter, no flesh could behold. But Enoch is flesh, and yet Enoch is here, inside the second house, standing in the fire. How? The text explains in verse 24, and the Lord called me with his own mouth, and said to me, come hither, Enoch, and hear my word. He called him by name. Come hither, Enoch. God did not wait for Enoch to figure out how to approach the unapproachable. God called him by his own mouth. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition has a teaching about this calling, preserved in the Tana Hike manuscript commentary. It says, the calling is not a reward for worthiness. It is not. You have been good enough. Now you may approach. The calling is, I know what you are made of. I know you are dust and breath. I know you carry the paradox I gave you. Come here. In a few moments, we reach the moment God speaks directly to Enoch, calling one trembling, face-down human into the place where angels could not go. Stick with me. Before we follow Enoch into what God says to him, let us spend a moment with the Ophanim, the Galgal, the wheel angels of the throne, because this is one of the most specific and most overlooked elements in the entire passage. 1 Enoch 14:18 again. Its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun. The throne has wheels. In most ancient religions, and in most ancient philosophies, the throne of the supreme deity is a fixed point, an unmovable center, the axis around which everything rotates, while the center itself stays still. But in the Book of Enoch, in the Ethiopian Ge'ez text preserved in the Codex Ethiopicus, the throne itself has wheels. It moves. In the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo theology, this is not incidental detail. This is among the most important theological statements in the entire canon. A throne with wheels means a God who moves, a God who approaches, a God who comes toward what he loves, not a God who sits in one fixed place, waiting for creatures to climb to him, but a God whose throne moves toward the ones he calls by name. Come hither, Enoch. The throne is already moving in the direction of the human voice. Before the human has finished trembling, the Ophanim, the Aramaic word from the Dead Sea Scrolls, 4Q201 fragments. In Hebrew, Ophanim means the turners. In Ge'ez, Galgal means the rollers. Both words carry the same root meaning continuous circular motion. And the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has incorporated this continuous motion into their most fundamental liturgical structure. The Galgal prayer cycle, 7 prayers, rotating in order, day after day, week after week, year after year, for 1,600 years, never stopping, in the same way that the wheels of the throne never stop. The Ethiopian monks on the islands of Lake Tana, in their stone monasteries above the water, have been turning the Galgal prayer cycle continuously, without ceasing, a living liturgical mirror of the Ophanim around the throne. If your thoughts are spinning tonight, if your mind cannot find the settled place, I want you to know that spinning is not always the enemy of rest. The Galgal spin, but they spin in perfect peace. The wheels of the throne turn, but they turn without anxiety, without the grinding urgency that our worried minds produce. Galgal, the holy rolling, the turning that serves the throne. Surrender the spinning of your mind tonight to a different kind of spinning, the spinning that moves in perfect orbit around the one who called Enoch by name. The text now says, verse 22, a great fire stood before him, and none around could draw nigh him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, yet he needed no counselor. 10,000 times 10,000, 100 million beings standing before the throne, and none could draw near, except Enoch, who did not draw near by his own momentum, but was called. In a few moments, God speaks to Enoch by name from the center of the fire, from the crystal throne, surrounded by Galgal wheels like the sun. And what God says to Enoch is a message that Enoch is then sent back into the ordinary world to carry. Be here with me. Can I be honest with you for a moment? There are nights when I try to pray, and I feel exactly like I am standing before a wall of crystal and fire, knowing God is there on the other side, and not knowing if I have permission to approach. The text tonight says something I hold on to. Even Enoch, the most righteous man of his generation, fell on his face trembling before this gate, and God called him by name. Come here, Enoch. I don't have it all figured out either, but that calling by name, that is what steadies me tonight. Maybe it steadies you too. Verse 24, and the Lord called me with his own mouth, and said to me, come hither, Enoch, and hear my word. With his own mouth. The text is specific about this. Not through an angel, not through a vision within a vision, not through an impression or an intuition. With his own mouth. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition finds this phrase enormously significant. In all of the interactions between God and humans in the Ethiopian canon, the 81 books of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, the phrase, with his own mouth, appears in very specific contexts. It appears when the communication is not delegated, not mediated, not passed through intermediary, but direct, person to person. The Ethiopian Tewahedo commentary tradition calls these moments Dewal Burhan. Dewal, the direct address, the mouth to ear. Burhan, the sacred radiance. Dewal Burhan, the direct radiance, the word that comes without distance. And the commentators note, Enoch is not a king. Enoch is not a priest. Enoch is not a prophet in the formal sense. He is described in Genesis as a man who walked with God. That is all. He walked with God, and God called him. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition has a teaching built on this, called the theology of Sira Exeaber. Sira, the walk, the daily movement, the ordinary rhythm of living. Exeaber, God, the walk with God. It is not a theology of extraordinary achievement. It is not a theology of perfect doctrine. It is not a theology of dramatic spiritual experiences. It is a theology of ordinary closeness. Walking day after day, season after season, year after year. Enoch walked with God, and the walking was the preparation for the calling. Not a single dramatic event, but a daily ordinary faithfulness that built something in Enoch over the course of centuries, something that made him able to hold the paradox, to stand in the trembling, to hear the calling through the fire. The Ethiopian Tewahedo sleep meditation tradition, which has existed in formal practice at the Lake Tana monasteries since at least the 5th century AD, is built on this principle. You do not prepare for the night, only in the night. You prepare for the rest, by the quality of the walking during the day, the still small voice that you hear in the threshold between waking and sleep, the Burhan Wekalel that you feel at the edge of consciousness is prepared for by the Sira Exeaver, the daily walking with God, even imperfectly, even stumblingly, even on the days when the walking felt like barely moving. All of it accumulates into the kind of being who can survive a paradox. And then verse 25, the very last verse of chapter 14. And one of the holy ones came to me and waked me, and he made me rise up and approach the door, and I bowed my face downwards. A holy one woke him. He had been lying on his face, trembling, prostrate, undone, and the Holy One woke him and helped him stand and brought him to the door of the inner chamber, not to push him through, not to force an encounter, just to bring him to the door. And Enoch bowed his face downwards, even at the door, even with God's invitation already spoken, even with the Holy One beside him. He bowed, because the bowing was not a gesture of shame. It was a gesture of acknowledgement. I see what I am in the presence of. I see the distance between my nature and what I am approaching. And I come forward anyway, because I was called. Did you catch that? Even at the moment of direct divine invitation, Enoch bowed, because holiness at the threshold requires both the calling and the response. To be genuine. Beautiful. Now, let us move into chapter 15, where God speaks to Enoch and gives him the message he will carry back to the ordinary world. 1 Enoch, chapter 15, verse 1. And he answered and said to me, and I heard his voice, Fear not, Enoch, thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness. Approach hither and hear my voice. Fear not. The first words from the crystal throne, the first words from the center of the fire. Fear not. Not justify yourself. Not explain your presence here. Not make the case for why you deserve to be in the place where no flesh should behold. Fear not. In the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition, fear not. in the context of divine speech, is called fikr kal. Fikr, love, deep attachment. Quale, voice, word, the love voice, the word that comes not from judgment, but from love that is already decided. The Ethiopian commentators note, God says, "Fear not" to Enoch, before Enoch has done or said anything. Not, fear not, because you have performed well. Not, fear not, because you are sufficient. Fear not, as a starting point, as an address, as the first language of the encounter. And then, thou righteous man, and scribe of righteousness. Enoch is called by his vocation. He is a scribe, one who records, one who preserves in writing what would otherwise be lost. And God acknowledges this calling in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition. This is profoundly significant. The entire Book of Enoch, the reason we have it tonight, the reason the Ge'ez manuscripts exist in the Lake Tana monasteries, the reason the Dead Sea Scrolls fragments survived in the caves at Qumran, is because Enoch was a scribe, and God called him righteous, specifically in that identity. Now verse 2, God gives Enoch his commission. Go, say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent thee to intercede for them, you should intercede for men and not men for you. Wherefore have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants as your sons? This is the message Enoch is sent to carry, the reply to the watchers who had descended to Mount Hermon, who had taken human wives, who had taught humanity the forbidden knowledge. We covered the watches in a previous gathering, the 200 angels of Mount Hermon, and tonight we understand something new about that story. The watchers tried to intercede for themselves by sending Enoch as their messenger, but God turns the message around. You should intercede for men, not the other way. The angels were supposed to serve the human story, not use the human story to serve themselves. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo commentary at Axum says, this verse is one of the most important in the entire Enochic tradition because it defines the proper relationship between the celestial and the earthly. The spiritual dimension exists to serve the growth of the human soul, not to extract from it, not to use it, not to corrupt it, but to serve it. And tonight, whatever spiritual voices have spoken to you in the dark, whether through fear or through comfort, the Ge'ez Tewahedo tradition offers this test. Does this voice serve my becoming, or does it serve its own agenda? The voice that comes from the crystal throne, the fikr kal, the love voice, always begins, fear not. We are moving now into chapter 17 of 1 Enoch, the chapter where Enoch is shown the foundations of the cosmos. And I want you to notice, as we move through this, that the pace of the text begins to slow. The angels are no longer rushing him. The vision is no longer overwhelming him. He is simply being shown. 1 Enoch, chapter 17, verse 1. And they took and brought me to a place in which those who were there were like flaming fire, and when they wished, they appeared as men. Those who were there appeared as men when they wished. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition has a beautiful teaching about this verse. It says, the highest spiritual beings choose the form that will be most receivable to the creature they are serving. When Enoch needed to see fire, they appeared as fire. When Enoch needed to be comforted, they appeared as men. Something familiar, something Enoch could recognize from his ordinary life. even in the highest heaven, in the innermost chambers, beyond the Mesfin Berhen, and the Bet Kedis, and the second firehouse, comfort still chooses the form that can be received, Ferzitvi, and they showed me a deep abyss with columns of heavenly fire, and among them I saw columns of fire, fall which were beyond measure, alike towards the height and towards the depth, columns of fire extending in both directions, upward without end, downward without end. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo commentary at Lake Tana calls this vision Sered Burhan, Serd, the pillar, the column, the thing that stands permanently vertical between what is above and what is below. Burhan, sacred light, the pillars of sacred light. Ethiopian monks who practice the deep contemplative prayer tradition of the Tewahedo Church use this image in their sleep meditation practice. Before sleep, they visualize a column of sacred light extending from above the head downward, through the body, into the earth below. A Serit Burhan, connecting the heavenly and the earthly within the body of the meditator. This practice has been in continuous use in Ethiopian monasteries since at least the 6th century AD. And tonight, as you lie there, in the threshold between waking and sleep, imaginate a column of light above you, moving downward through you, grounding itself in the earth beneath you. You are not separate from the cosmos tonight. You are the meeting point, the threshold between above and below, dust and breath, earth and heaven. And Enoch is being shown this. Persevere. And beyond these fountains, I saw another place which was still more distant. There was fire on all sides, and on one of its sides, a great throne, where the great and glorious Holy One sits. Even from here, from this place of pillars of fire and columned light, the throne is visible, even from the outer edge of the cosmos, even from the columns that span from heaven to earth. The throne can be seen. The Ethiopian Tewahedo monks at the island monasteries of Lake Tana have a saying preserved in their oral tradition. It translates roughly, even when you cannot feel the center, you can always see the light from the throne. Even on the nights when God feels distant, the Gelgel is still turning. The Ophanim are still wheeling like the sun. The crystal throne is still present in the fire. The monks say, if you can be still enough, you will see the throne from wherever you are. And now, dear friend, we are approaching the place where the words will become the sound, and the sound will become your rest. In just a few more moments, I will take you into the deep reading, where Enoch's vision becomes the current that carries you to sleep. But first, one more thing I want to leave with you. From 1 Enoch chapter 17 verse 8, and I saw the treasuries of all the winds. I saw how he had furnished with them the whole creation, and the firm foundations of the earth, the treasuries of all the winds. God keeps wind, stores it, has a treasury for it. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo tradition says this verse reveals something most theology overlooks. The world is not maintained by force. It is maintained by treasure, by the careful dispensing of what has been lovingly collected and kept. Tonight, the wind outside your window, or the stillness where wind is absent, comes from the treasury, is measured, is chosen, is so, for tonight specifically, for wherever you are lying right now. Sleep now into the treasury. You've heard enough for tonight, dear friend. Let the words become the sound now. Let Enoch's voice become your rest. You don't need to understand. You don't need to remember. You don't need to hold anything together. Just receive. Let me now read for you the full text slowly, at the pace of the Ge'ez tradition, the pace of monks reading on islands, in the middle of Lake Tana, at 1 o'clock in the morning. There is no rush here. There is only the ancient voice, and your rest. 1 Enoch. Chapter 14. The Book of the Words of Righteousness, and of the reprimand of the Eternal Watchers, in accordance with the command of the Holy Great One. In that vision, I saw in my sleep what I will now say, with a tongue of flesh, and with the breath of my mouth, which the Great One has given to men to converse therewith, and understand with the heart, as he has created and given to man the power of understanding the word of wisdom. So hath he created me also, and given me the power of reprimanding the watchers, the children of heaven. I wrote out your petition, and in my vision it appeared thus, that your petition will not be granted unto you throughout all the days of eternity, and that judgment has been finally passed upon you, and from henceforth you shall not ascend into heaven unto all eternity. And in bonds of the earth, the decree has gone forth to bind you for all the days of the world, and previously you shall have seen the destruction of your beloved sons, and ye shall have no pleasure in them, but they shall fall before you by the sword, and your petition on their behalf shall not be granted, nor yet on your own. And the vision was shown to me thus. Behold, in the vision clouds invited me, and a mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightnings sped and hastened me, and the winds in the vision caused me to fly, and lifted me upward, and bore me into heaven. And I went in till I drew nigh to a wall which is built of crystals, and surrounded by tongues of fire, and it began to affright me, and I went into the tongues of fire, and drew nigh to a large house, which was built of crystals, and the walls of the house were like a tessellated floor of crystals, and its groundwork was of crystal. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings, and between them were fiery cherubim, and their heaven was as water. A flaming fire surrounded the walls, and its portals blazed with fire. And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice. There were no delights of life therein. Fear covered me, and trembling got hold upon me. And as I quaked and trembled, I fell upon my face, and I beheld a vision. And lo, there was a second house, greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me, and it was built of flames of fire, and in every respect it so excelled in splendor and magnificence and extent that I cannot describe to you its splendor and its extent. And its floor was of fire, and above it were lightnings, and the path of the stars, and its ceiling also was flaming fire. And I looked and saw therein a lofty throne. Its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun. And there was the vision of cherubim, and from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire, so that I could not look thereon. And the great glory sat thereon, and his raiment shone more brightly than the sun, and was whiter than any snow. None of the angels could enter, and could behold his face, by reason of the magnificence and glory, and no flesh could behold him. The flaming fire was round about him, and a great fire stood before him, and none around could draw nigh him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, yet he needed no counselor, and the most holy ones who were nigh to him did not leave by night, nor depart from him. And until then I had been prostrate on my face, trembling, and the Lord called me with his own mouth, and said to me, Come hither, Enoch, and hear my word. And one of the holy ones came to me, and waked me, and he made me rise up, and approach the door, and I bowed my face downwards. Chapter 15. And he answered and said to me, And I heard his voice, "Fear not, Enoch, thou righteous man, and scribe of righteousness. Approach hither, and hear my voice, and go, say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent thee to intercede for them, you should intercede for men, and not men for you. Wherefore have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives, and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants as your sons? And though ye were holy, spiritual, living the eternal life, you have defiled yourselves with the blood of women, and have begotten children with the blood of flesh, and as the children of men have lusted after flesh and blood, as those also do who die and perish. Therefore have I given them wives also, that they might impregnate them, and beget children by them, that thus nothing might be wanting to them on earth. But you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life, and immortal for all generations of the world. And therefore I have not appointed wives for you, for as for the spiritual ones of the heaven, in heaven is their dwelling. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men, and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. Chapter 17. And they took and brought me to a place in which those who were there were like flaming fire, and when they wished, they appeared as men. And they brought me to the place of darkness, and to a mountain, the point of whose summit reached to heaven. And I saw the places of the luminaries, and the treasuries of the stars, and of the thunder, and in the uttermost depths where were a fiery bow and arrows in their quiver, and a fiery sword in all the lightnings. And they took me to the living waters, and to the fire of the west, which receives every setting of the sun. And I came to a river of fire, in which the fire flows like water, and discharges itself into the great sea. Towards the west I saw the great rivers, and came to the great river, and to the great darkness, and went to the place where no flesh walks. I saw the mountains of the darkness of winter, and the place whence all the waters of the deep flow. I saw the mouths of all the rivers of the earth, and the mouth of the deep. Chapter 18. I saw the treasuries of all the winds. I saw how he had furnished with them the whole creation, and the firm foundations of the earth. And I saw the cornerstone of the earth. I saw the four winds which bear the earth, and the firmament of the heaven. And I saw how the winds stretch out the vaults of heaven, and have their station between heaven and earth. These are the pillars of the heaven. I saw the winds of heaven which turn and bring the circumference of the sun, and all the stars to their setting. I saw the winds on the earth carrying the clouds. I saw the paths of the angels. I saw at the end of the earth the firmament of the heaven above, and I proceeded and saw a place which burns day and night, where there are 7 mountains of magnificent stones, 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south. And as for those towards the east, one was of colored stone, and one of pearl, and one of jacinth, and those towards the south were of red stone. But the middle one reached to heaven, like the throne of God, of alabaster, and the summit of the throne was of sapphire. And I saw flaming fire, and beyond these mountains is a region, the end of the great earth. There the heavens were completed, and I saw a deep abyss, with columns of heavenly fire, and among them I saw columns of fire fall which were beyond measure, alike towards the height and towards the depth. And beyond that abyss I saw a place which had no firmament of the heaven above, and no firmly founded earth beneath it. There was no water upon it, and no birds, but it was a waste and horrible place. I saw there 7 stars like great burning mountains, and to me, when I inquired regarding them, the angel said, "This place is the end of heaven and earth. This has become a prison for the stars, and the host of heaven, and the stars which roll over the fire are they which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord in the beginning of their rising, because they did not come forth at their appointed times, and he was wroth with them, and bound them till the time when their guilt should be consummated, even for 10,000 years." Chapter 19. And Uriel said to me, "Here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Here shall they stand till the day of the great judgment. And the women also of the angels who went astray shall become sirens. And I, Enoch, alone saw the vision, the ends of all things, and no man shall see as I have seen." Chapter 20. And these are the names of the holy angels who watch. Uriel, one of the holy angels, who is over the world and over Tartarus. Raphael, one of the holy angels, who is over the spirits of men. Raguel, one of the holy angels, who takes vengeance on the world of the luminaries. Michael, one of the holy angels, to wit, he that is set over the best part of mankind, and over chaos. Sarakael, one of the holy angels, who is set over the spirits, who sin in the spirit. Gabriel, one of the holy angels, who is over paradise, and the serpents, and the cherubim. Remiel, one of the holy angels, whom God set over those who rise. Chapter 21. And I proceeded to where things were chaotic, and I saw there something horrible. I saw neither a heaven above, nor a firmly founded earth, but a place chaotic and horrible. And there I saw 7 stars of the heaven, bound together in it, like great mountains, and burning with fire. Then I said, "For what sin are they bound? And on what account have they been cast in hither?" Then said Uriel, one of the holy angels, who was with me, and was chief over them, "Enoch, why dost thou ask? And why art thou eager for the truth? These are of the number of the stars of heaven, which have transgressed the commandment of the Lord, and are bound here till 10,000 years. The time entailed by their sins are consummated. And from thence I went to another place, which was still more horrible than the former, and I saw a horrible thing, a great fire there which burnt and blazed, and the place was cleft as far as the abyss, being full of great descending columns of fire. Neither its extent or magnitude could I see, nor could I conjecture. Then I said, "How fearful is the place, and how terrible to look upon." Then Uriel answered me, one of the holy angels, who was with me, and said unto me, "Enoch, why hast thou such fear and affright?" And I answered, "Because of this fearful place, and because of the spectacle of the pain." And he said unto me, "This place is the prison of the angels, and here they will be imprisoned forever." Chapter 22. And thence I went to another place, and he showed me in the west another great and high mountain, and of a hard rock, and 4 hollow places. deep and wide and very smooth. How smooth are the hollow places, and deep and dark to look at. Then Raphael answered, one of the holy angels who was with me, and said unto me, these hollow places have been created for this very purpose, that the spirits of the souls of the dead should assemble therein, yea, that all the souls of the children of men should assemble here. And these places have been made to receive them till the day of their judgment, and till their appointed period, till the great judgment comes upon them. I saw the spirits of the children of men who were dead, and their voice went forth to heaven, and made suit. Then I asked Raphael the angel who was with me, and I said unto him, this spirit, whose is it, whose voice goeth forth and maketh suit? And he answered me, saying, this is the spirit which went forth from Abel, whom his brother Cain slew, and he makes his suit against him till his seed is destroyed from the face of the earth, and his seed is annihilated from amongst the seed of men. Let the words continue to fall, like water, like the still, small voice at the edge of the cosmos. 1 Enoch, chapter 24. And from thence I went to another place of the earth, and he showed me a mountain range of fire, which burnt day and night. And I went beyond it and saw 7 magnificent mountains, all differing each from the other, and the stones thereof were magnificent and beautiful, magnificent as a whole, of glorious appearance and fair exterior. 3 towards the east, 1 founded on the other, and 3 towards the south, 1 upon the other, and deep rough ravines, no one of which joined with any other. And the 7th mountain was in the midst of these, and it excelled them in height, resembling the seat of a throne, and fragrant trees encircled the throne. And amongst them was a tree such as I had never yet smelt, neither was any amongst them, nor were others like it. It had a fragrance beyond all fragrance, and its leaves and blooms, and would wither not forever, and its fruit is beautiful, and its fruit resembles the dates of a palm. Then I said, how beautiful is this tree, and fragrant, and its leaves are fair, and its blooms very delightful in appearance. Then answered Michael, one of the holy and honored angels who was with me, and was their leader. And he said unto me, Enoch, why dost thou ask me regarding the fragrance of the tree, and why dost thou wish to learn the truth? Then I answered him, saying, I wish to know about everything, but especially about this tree. And he answered, saying, this high mountain which thou hast seen, whose summit is like the throne of God, is his throne where the Holy Great One, the Lord of glory, the eternal King, will sit when he shall come down to visit the earth with goodness. And as for this fragrant tree, no mortal is permitted to touch it, till the great judgment, when he shall take vengeance on all, and bring everything to its consummation forever. It shall then be given to the righteous and holy. Its fruit shall be for food to the elect. It shall be transplanted to the holy place, to the temple of the Lord, the eternal King. Then shall they rejoice with joy, and be glad, and into the holy place shall they enter, and its fragrance shall be in their bones, and they shall live a long life on earth, such as thy fathers lived, and in their days shall no sorrow or plague or torment or calamity touch them. Chapter 25. Then blessed I the God of glory, the eternal King, who hath prepared such things for the righteous, and hath created them, and promised to give to them. Chapter 27. Then I asked regarding all the hollow places, why one hollow is separated from another? And he answered me and said, these 3 places that have been separated, the spirits of the dead will assemble, and from thence the souls of the children of men, and the accursed valley. It is for those who are accursed forever. Here shall be gathered together all the accursed ones, those who speak with their mouth unbecoming words against the Lord, and of his glory speak hard things. Here shall they be gathered together, and here shall be their place of judgment. In the last days there shall be upon them the spectacle of righteous judgment, in the presence of the righteous forever. Here shall the merciful bless the Lord of glory, the eternal King. In the days of judgment over the former, they shall bless him for the mercy, in accordance with which he has assigned them their lot. Chapter 33. And from thence I went to the ends of the earth, and saw there great beasts, and each differed from the other, and birds, also differing in appearance, and beauty, and voice, the one differing from the other. And to the east of those beasts I saw the ends of the earth whereon the heaven rests, and the portals of the heaven open. And I saw how the stars of heaven come forth, and I counted the portals out of which they proceed, and wrote down all their outlets, of each individual star, by itself, according to their number, and their names, and their courses, and their positions, and their times, and their months, as Uriel the holy angel, who was with me, showed me. He showed all things to me, and wrote them down for me. Also their names he wrote for me, and their laws, and their companies. And now, dear friend, let the text become the current beneath you. You are not reading. You are floating on the surface of something ancient, something that has been flowing. Since before the mountains, you can see from any window, or mountains, the Geye's voice, the voice of the Ethiopian monks at Lake Tana, reading these same words tonight, by lamplight. Chapter 37. The beginning of the words of wisdom, which I took up, in my parable, to those who dwell on the earth. Hear ye men of olden time, and see ye who come after, the words of the Holy One, which I will speak before the Lord of spirits. It were better to declare them only to the men of olden time. But even from those who come after, we will not withhold the beginning of wisdom. Till the present day, such wisdom has never been given by the Lord of spirits, as I have received, according to my insight, according to the good pleasure of the Lord of spirits, by whom the lot of eternal life has been given to me. Now 3 parables were imparted to me, and I lifted up my voice, and recounted them to those who dwell on the dry ground. The first parable, when the congregation of the righteous shall appear, and sinners shall be judged for their sins, and shall be driven from the face of the earth, and when the righteous one shall appear before the eyes of the righteous, whose elect works hang upon the Lord of spirits, and light shall appear to the righteous, and the elect who dwell on the earth. Where then will be the dwelling of the sinners, and where the resting place of those who have denied the Lord of spirits? It had been good for them if they had not been born. When too the secrets of the righteous shall be revealed, then shall sinners be judged, and godless men shall be troubled, and all kings and the mighty, and the exalted, and those who rule the earth, shall fall down before him on their faces, and worship and set their hope upon that Son of Man, and petition him, and supplicate for mercy at his hands. And thereupon the Lord of spirits bade them hasten out of their dwelling places and their judgment seats, and from out of their congregation, and they will not be able to withstand before the face of the mighty and chosen one, and there shall be no place of flight for them. Let the words wash over you now. You don't need to follow every sentence. Let it be sound, ancient sound. The Giyez monks at Lake Tana have been reading this in the middle of the night for 1,600 years. Tonight, you rest in the same stream. The shepherd is watching tonight. He knows where you are. He knows what you carried today. And tonight, he called you through an ancient text through a crystal gate, through the Mesfin Burhan, and the Bet Kidos, through a voice preserved in Ethiopia for 2,000 years. He called you to this moment of rest. Sleep now. Dear friend, sleep now.